going on, y'all? Welcome to episode number 1 of Cabin Checks. This is a weekly fireside chat that I want to do with you just to help share some of the principles and strategies that I've used that have really helped me in my life and share a little bit of the lessons learned and wisdom earned that I've accumulated over the years. This is something I'm really passionate about, and I'm super excited to kick off this series today. But before we even get into the topic, I gotta explain where the name Cabin Checks came from, because I know some of y'all are like, what in the world is a cabin check? That's the most random name for a series like this I've ever heard in my life. So when I was about 14, 15 years old, a lot of you know that I was a gymnast my entire life. I started at the age of 10, went up until 16 years old just doing gymnastics recreationally, and then at 16 I began competing, did 2 years of level 10, which is the highest level before college and elite. Walked onto the team at the University of Michigan, and we'll talk about the rest of my career there later. That'll be for another episode. There's plenty to talk about, trust me. But along that process, I started going to this gymnastics camp in the middle of nowhere, Tennessee. And I started off as a camper, actually on scholarship, because we couldn't afford to go and pay the tuition prices at camp there. But I got a scholarship to go for 1 week. I loved it so much, changed my whole life, that I wrote the owners an email. And I said, if there's ever anything that I can do to repay the favor, anything that I can do to help you guys out, I'm all in. I would love to do it. And they hit me back a few weeks later and said, why don't you come back and you can be what we call a junior counselor, a JC. We always refer to them as janitor children because that's really what we were doing. We would clean the camp, wash the dishes, take out the trash, all sorts of stuff, in exchange for a break in tuition to be there. And so I ended up spending another 3 weeks that very first summer when I was 15 years old at the camp. And then as the years went on, I became a counselor, I became a coach. At one point I was in charge of the other janitor children, and I built this little team of all the JCs that were working with me. And we had these things at the end of every day called cabin checks, and that is right before bed, the coaches would go into the camper cabins and just talk to the kids about life, right? Life advice, some motivation, lessons learned, wisdom earned, right? And that was just the coach's opportunity to connect with the kids on a level other than just sports, other than just how to get better at gymnastics, right? And I loved it. That was my first exposure to motivational speaking, my first exposure to really just pouring into people and helping coach them in areas outside of something strictly athletics related. And I fell in love with it. And I realized when I became in charge of the rest of the team of JCs that we were still cleaning when the cabin checks were going on. So I said, you know what? We can't accept that. We got to have our own little cabin check situation, just us, private party, invite only, just for the kids that are cleaning the camp. So I was maybe 16, 17, and I started giving these talks to kids who were 15, 16, like they were my same age basically. And it's so crazy how things worked out, because I would literally go listen to Eric Thomas on YouTube, go back to the kids, give them a Walmart brand terrible rendition of the exact same stories, like straight pirated his content. And I would go tell the same stories to the kids, and I just fell in love with the storytelling and the coaching and just trying to help these guys, with their lives. And that is how Cabin Check started for me. And I did that for years and years and years on end before I found that you could get paid to do that you could get paid to be a professional speaker. I was an introvert. I was nervous doing it for the first few times. So, man, it's amazing to see how it's just evolved. But anyway, today, I want to bring it back. I want to bring that same spirit into it of we're just having a little fireside chat. It's not an actual campfire, but I got the candle out just for y'all. And it's just us being able to connect in a little bit more casual way and talk about some of the things that have really helped me out in life. So today's topic, I want to kick things off with this because this is something that I talk to a lot of these kids about, right? They're 16, 17 years old. And one of the biggest questions that came up was, how do I find my direction in life? Like, I'm just kind of hurtling through life at warp speed, but I don't feel like I have a purpose. I don't feel like I know what my direction is. And that's a problem that I believe it's intrinsic to growing up. I think it's something that everybody goes through, and it is a difficult, challenging problem to solve. But I do think that there's some formulas that we can use and apply that will help us make a little bit more sense out of that transition, right? Of trying to figure out our purpose and direction in life. So there's 3 techniques that I'm going to recommend you. Number 1 is finding what you can derive meaning from, right? Number 1 is find what you can derive meaning from. What I mean by that is it's really easy to take a super nihilistic approach to life, right? If you want to paint the picture of the world is bleak and nothing matters, and 100 years from now, 200, 300, 500 years from now, depending on who you are and what you do, nobody's going to remember my name anyway. Nobody's going to remember the people that I helped. Nobody's going to remember my quotes. Nobody's going to remember, nobody's really going to be impacted by what we do 10, 20, 30, 50 generations from now, right? And it's really easy to take on this super nihilistic perspective of, if nothing matters, then what am I doing anyway? Why don't I optimize my life for short-term selfish pleasure and maximize what I can get, rather than trying to give anything and even worrying about living in my purpose? And I would challenge the people that think like that to see what you can derive meaning from. And what I mean by that is, when nothing means anything, anything can mean everything. I'm gonna say that one more time. When nothing means anything, anything can mean everything. What that means to me is that I think there is a large extent of that nihilistic worldview that's kind of true. I mean, just realistically, we're probably not going to be remembered 1,000 years from now, right? If the stars and the sun hasn't burned up our planet by then anyway, then we're probably not going to be remembered. So there is some truth to this. Well, why don't I just live my own life rather than worrying about any of these bigger ideas and philosophies? But I believe that if that is in fact the case, that nothing really means anything, then that gives us the freedom of choice to say, well, here's this thing that I'm going to dedicate my life to, that I can derive meaning from, that I can find meaning from. And whenever you find that thing, that is going to fuel you. But it's an individual choice. It's not like, okay, here's the prescription for your purpose in life, go have fun with it. It is an individual introspective process for you to say, well, what makes me feel like my life means something? Is it impacting other people? Is it coaching other people? Is it speaking to other people and like me, helping them make the most out of their life's potential? That's what I derive meaning from. For you, it could be sports. For you, it could be business. For you, it could be whatever it is. It could be parenting. It could be being the best son or daughter that you can be. But you got to find that thing that for you, you have these moments where you're like, yep, this right here is what gives my life meaning. The way that I help people find this is a purpose emotions exercise. And the way that you do this is you just list the top 10 moments of your life, right? The top 10 moments where you felt on top of the world. Your top 10 moments where you felt like, if I die today, you know what? It was a worthwhile ride to be on. It was a worthwhile life to live because this made it worth it. Find the top 10 moments for you that are like that. It could be a big achievement. It could be a big moment. It could be something small. It could be something where you're just hanging out with your friends and family. And for you, that connection is what you crave out of life. Whatever it is, write down the top 10 moments and then go a step further and write down, how did those moments make you feel? Those are your purpose emotions. What emotions did you feel? Was it satisfaction? Was it connection with others? Was it achievement? Was it victory over a challenge or an obstacle? Like, what was it for you that made you feel so good in that moment? And when you find those, I want you to circle the moments. You should have a few of them now. Circle the ones that commonly reappear. So if you wrote down 10 moments and 2 or 3 emotions for each of those moments, then I want you to circle the ones that are in common. And what you're going to find is there's probably 3 or 4 where you're like, okay, these are recurring themes. Like, these are the things that make me feel alive, that make me feel at my best. When you find those, I need you to hold on to them, and I need you to latch onto those emotions, and I need you to learn how you can produce those emotions. Because the biggest problem today in our want it now society and this time of instant gratification, the biggest problem that we have is consuming our purpose emotions rather than producing our purpose emotions. What do I mean by that? Let's say that you go through this exercise. You write down the top 10 moments of your life. You write down the 2 or 3 emotions that you correlate with each of those moments. You find that peace is one of those driving common emotions that you have across all these different moments of your life. That feeling at peace, that feeling at ease, that just feeling that overall spiritual sense of serenity, that is something that gives your life meaning. That is something that you just absolutely live for. And we can say, okay, well, in today's, again, instant gratification society, it's a lot easier to get that feeling of peace at the bottom of a bottle than it is to generate it from meditation, from journaling, from setting things up and arranging your life in a certain way where it is conducive to a feeling of peace. It's easier to consume the emotion than it is to produce the emotion. So if you can start to figure out, okay, here's how I derive meaning from my life. For me, as a coach, I derive meaning from helping others achieve their potential. Like, that is it for me. It's that feeling of achievement where I'm helping somebody else achieve their goals and I'm helping them get unstuck. For me, that just lights me on fire. So whether it's fitness coaching, gymnastics coaching, speaking from stage, life coaching, business coaching, all of that is something that just activates the best part of me and makes me feel alive. So what I want to do is consciously and continuously find ways to produce that emotion. So what do? My career as a speaker and a coach, right? I've set my life up in such a way where I can have the feeling of helping people through those situations. Now, if I wanted to consume that feeling instead of produce that feeling, then maybe I would be making a habit of putting other people down on the internet, and just so I can give them some advice that they never asked for, right? I can say, you're doing this all wrong, here's how you should do it. That's a pretty easy way to consume that feeling, but I'm not really producing it from my own life. I'm not bringing that out of me and contributing it to the world. So I don't want to get too deep or too spiritual on this one, but that is one way that you can find your purpose. You go through that exercise of finding the emotions that really drive you, and then you start to reverse engineer how you can produce those in your everyday life. So that's number one. Number two is I want you to experiment. I want you to just do so many random activities. Like, this is the Gary Vee method, right? He says when you're young, just go chase everything. Work at this industry for a year, work in this industry for a year, bounce back and forth between mentors and coaches, and just experience life. Go live in another country, like experience life, and then figure out from there what it is that really lights you on fire. See, Carl Jung, the psychologist from way back in the day, he had this concept called circumambulation, and it's a really deep concept of how you can find your purpose in life. And that is that when we sit here from our current perspective, right here, right now, today, we have a perspective that is unique to our current position in life, in time, in relation to others, right? We have a certain perspective. And maybe we have these different interests in our life, and we have an interest in, let's just again take me for example, we have an interest in speaking. Now, I was an introvert my entire life, so I never thought that I would grow up to be a speaker on stage in front of thousands of people. But I did know that I enjoyed listening to motivational speakers. I enjoyed taking notes from them. I enjoyed thinking about frameworks of how I can think about life and make the most out of my potential. I enjoyed thinking about these things. So it was an interest. It wasn't a passion or some burning desire. It was just an interest. And I said, okay, here's my current day perspective. Here's this goal that I think that I might like. Meaning, back then, I would like to get close to some of these other speakers that I look up to. So this is my perspective as an 18-year-old, as a 20-year-old. And I would look at this goal, this interest, and I would say, here's where I want to go. I want to get close to some of these guys like Eric Thomas and Gary Vee and all these people that I look up to. So I'm going to start taking steps to move closer to this goal. And over a series of years and executing on those steps, I got closer to where I thought that I wanted to be. The thing is, once you get there, and this is the whole concept that Jung created of circumambulation, once I get here, my perspective has changed. Because I'm no longer an 18 or 20-year-old, I'm a 22-year-old, and I've actually accomplished that of getting closer to some of these people. So now I say, oh, I see the world from a different place now because I'm here instead of here. Now that interest has turned into more of a passion. It's turned into more of that burning desire. And now that I'm here, I think that my new goal is to go over here. Now I actually want to be like these people. Now I actually see that I can do this. I could be a speaker. I could be successful at this. So now my goal is no longer here because now I'm here. My goal is here. Let's start making conscious effort and steps to go over here. And what happens is you spiral into your purpose. You're not going to know from sitting here and thinking over and over. And this is the mistake that I made, guys. Like, I spent countless hours thinking about what is my purpose in life? What should I be doing with my life? What do I want to do? And I would try and get it perfect. I would try and just nail it down specifically. And what I finally realized is I can't see that far ahead. It's like a car with the headlights, right? You can only see 100, 200 feet ahead, but then once you drive another 200 feet, you can see another 200 feet. It's the same concept Jung came up with. If you start taking steps towards what you think your goal might be, what you think your purpose might be, then eventually you'll get more and more clarity and you'll begin to pinpoint with sharper and sharper accuracy as you continue to move forward. So massive action will always solve a lack of clarity. So if you do nothing else, experiment with your interest, get closer to them, and as you do, you're going to start to find out with greater and greater levels of clarity what you really want to dedicate your life to. So those are two things, right? Find those purpose emotions, and number two is just explore your interests, and you're going to start dialing that in as you get closer to it. The third and final thing that I would tell you is try and find the intersection. Now, this one's going to take some introspection, some self-assessment, but try and find the intersection of what you have to do, what you want to do, and what you're meant to do. All right, one more time. What you have to do or what you need to do, what you want to do, and what you are meant to do. If you can find the intersection of those three things, I promise you, you will never live another day in your life where you feel like you are lacking purpose. All right. Now, how do I define those three terms? What you need to do or what you have to do is something that you can get paid for, right? You have to do something that generates economic value. It doesn't have to be running a hedge fund where you can make billions, but you've got to start dedicating your life to something where in some way, shape, or form, and this doesn't even have to be the main thing, but something about it, one of the branches of this tree of your life that you're building has some economic value that you can provide so that you can get paid for whatever this thing is that you're doing. That's what you need to do or what you have to do. What you want to do is something that you're passionate about, something that interests you. And then what you're meant to do is leveraging your gift, something that comes easier to you than it will for other people, right? You always want to stay in that pocket of what you do best. And so if you can find the intersection of those three things, like with me, coaching, right? It provides economic value. People are willing to pay a lot of money for coaching in different areas, life, business, relationship, etc. What I want to do, I love giving advice. I love solving problems collaboratively with other people. Like, I just love that process of mapping out a strategy of how we can make you better. That just lights me on fire, right? So I want to do it. And then what I'm meant to do, I've always been super analytical. I've always been a very critical thinker. To me, it makes a lot of sense just naturally to look at something. This is why I was a good gymnastics coach, to look at something and say, oh, it's not just what I see in this picture. Let's go back 10 frames to see the cause and effect relationship of what led up to this moment where something needs to be fixed. And then we reverse engineer it 10 steps back, fix that, and then this is going to be smooth sailing. That line of thinking is very intuitive and natural to me. And so I've just found that coaching is a good intersection of those three things. I want to do it. It provides economic value, and I'm gifted at it. So for me, this is a very clear decision of where to direct my life. And again, that's not something that's necessarily going to come immediately. It's not something that you'll necessarily be able to do without a little bit of exploration and some deep diving into your own experiences, your own life. But if you can start to use that framework to just say, okay, what can I do that makes money? What do I want to do with my life? And what am I gifted at? What comes easier to me than it does to most other people? That will really set you on the path to purpose. And I believe that with these three frameworks, finding your purpose emotions, what you can derive meaning from, the concept of exploring your interests and allowing that psychological process of circumambulation to take place, and then finding that intersection of what you have to do, what you want to do, and what you're meant to do. Those three frameworks will give you a phenomenal start to put you on the path to purpose. So I sincerely hope that this was helpful for you. If it was, do me a huge favor and share this with a friend who might be struggling through some of those same thoughts of how do I find my purpose? What do I want to do in my life? I know it is such a stressful question. It's a big question, but it is a necessary one to answer if you want to live a fulfilled lifestyle for a lifetime. So please share this with somebody else that could get some benefit from it. And as always, please feel free to give me a comment below. I want to know what your thoughts are. I'd love to do some coaching in the comments with you. I want to know what you think about all of this. And of course, don't forget to subscribe for more videos just like this. And we will see you on the next episode of Cabin Checks.